Welcome, guys, in this new episode of Young Learner. I'm Daniele Mingolla, and today we are going to talk about no-code platform, what they are, and why we should use them. As always, I'm not alone here, but I have a very interesting guest that is Drew. So thank you, Drew, for being here. And
Thanks for having me.
I want just to spend some minutes in order to describe you how I meet you. I mean your figure. So in summary, I'm subscribed to a newsletter that talks about people that build product using no code platform. And when I read the story of Drew, I was really impressed. But I mean, I will not say anything. So it's time for you, Drew, to talk. So if you could, you tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah. So, a little about myself first in general is I was always kind of an entrepreneur. I started my first business at age 19, which was an agency, like a digital agency. At the time, that was kind of like a new thing. Companies were all starting to get websites back then. And so I was making websites, that kind of thing. But over the years, I've like become much more focused on like how to be more efficient, how to work less hours and produce more value, all these kind of things that no code embodies. And so in my career, I'd been sort of leading up to no code and just doing some freelance stuff. I have a bunch of side projects, like all these little micro SaaS projects that I run, that kind of thing. And then eventually, when the no code trend hit, I ended up just getting really involved in like the no code space. And I was trying all these new no code products. And I was big in that moment, which led me eventually to Bildr, which is where I'm at now. And Bildr is just like a super advanced no code platform. So it's kind of what I'd consider the top end power wise of all the no code platforms. And so these days I'm kind of just like working on that and doing the same thing you're doing, essentially helping all these other people come in and not have to learn all that code stuff, but be able to build applications pretty much whatever they want.
Ah, perfect, perfect, perfect. And can I ask you, when did you start using no-code platform, and how did you get into it? I mean, why the first time you said, "Okay, I cannot develop this product by myself, but I need to use no-code platform"?
So I actually was a developer. So I've been like a developer for 20 years now professionally. And so I came from the other end of where other, people might come from like, I don't know how to code, but I want to build an app. How do I get it done? I came from the other end where I was like, I can build every part of an app. And I had at some point in my career, like I'd produced pretty big things on my own, but I really wanted to do it more efficiently. Like I hated setting up like server and hosting infrastructure. I hated like all the boilerplate code that you're always writing. I hated managing the files. I hated the GitHub repos. Like it was just like a lot of stuff that was not the product. I really liked building the product and thinking about the product, not all the extra. So in a way, I was like always looking for it. And actually, at my agency, we had an internal CMS, and that was like the whole point of the CMS is I had built this kind of system so that we could hire designers who didn't know code, and they were able to produce like some more advanced code things, through our CMS. So that was before the term no code existed, and it was like something we were just doing to be more efficient. We didn't think of it as like this bigger movement that it's become. But I think I kind of point to that as like my first foray in the no code. But what happened was I left the agency. I was working on my own. I was still trying to be more efficient. Like I still had this focus on like how can I write less code and spend less time coding, but I didn't pinpoint no code yet. And then I started seeing the no code trend and seeing companies calling themselves no code, these tools coming out. Webflow and Bubble was probably around that time I got introduced to them. And it was just like, it hit me that like, this is what I was looking for. I didn't know it at the time, but this is what I was looking for. And so at that point, I actually went all in and I converted my agent. I was doing freelance. I call it an agency at this point. It was like I left my big agency. I was doing a solo agency. I converted that to all no code. And it was pretty early on. So it was before you could really do that. Well, you can do that today. I had to still write a lot of code. I had to still bridge things together. I even would have to put up like custom APIs to bridge two no code tools together, things like that in the early days. But I was committed to it because I just like, how could it not be the way? Like no code, it has to be the next evolution of software. Why would you want to write extra code when you don't have to? So I was like, I'm going to do this. And I eventually it really paid off for me because that's like, those were the steps that led up to Bildr. But I'd say that was my first kind of foray. And I did a lot of Webflow stuff back in the day, Adalo for apps, Funkable for apps. that kind of thing. I don't even know. Like, it's hard to even remember because the space changed so fast. I mean, that was only 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago at most. So
How much time do you think that you have saved thanks no code?
I honestly think it's so.
Yes.
I think if I said a number, it would sound exaggerated. But what I usually say for Builder is that I'm 10x faster, and I believe that I'm like, I don't know, 30x faster, 40x faster. I just feel like that sounds too unbelievable. But the thing of it is that, like, most of code and most of building applications is managing the actual code. So like, you're writing a lot of syntax, you're commenting it so you know what to do later. You're thinking of naming conventions that make sense. And so it's like a lot of time to spend on that. And if you want to change any of that stuff later in the process, you're going back through all these files, and there's a lot of headache written, there's a lot of time in managing the code base. And so no code tools, one of the biggest benefits of them is you don't have to manage that. It's like, if you want to change your naming convention of your data, like in an advanced application, 3 years in, you can change it and it updates everywhere. And like, you just saved yourself, like right there, you just saved yourself tons of time refactoring code. I think that's what I'm kind of factoring in when I say at least 10x faster.
So we were talking about the fact that now you are saving a lot of times, but the question is, imagine to be like a person that has not that don't have any background in the IT, in computer science, because this is one of the questions that typically I received in these last days. But okay, how is the learning curve for this no-code platform for a person that does not have any background in computer science? In your experience, I mean, have you ever seen like other people that opposite of what you have as experience, they don't have anything, I mean, in computer science, they never touch Visual Studio or stuff like that?
Yeah, I see. So I'll talk like generally first, then specifically about Builder, which is what I'm working on now, because we see it there too. But in general, there's this full spectrum of no code tools, and some of them are like insanely easy, like easier than, filling out a form on a website, whatever's the easiest thing you can think of. They're easy, they're no problem. Some of them have a huge learning curve, and basically, you're not learning to code, but you're learning a whole other system, whatever their system is. So I think it kind of depends on that. And what I would say is that it ultimately is going to depend on your goal for what you're trying to build. So if you need to build a website and it doesn't need to do anything special but show some information, you just need it hosted, it's kind of like a straightforward, easy thing. You can get that done with absolutely no code, no problem, and get it done for like cheap and fast and all the things that make no code appealing. That would be perfect. If you want to go past that and do something more advanced, either that platform is going to be limited, or you're going to have to do something that's more code like, whether you have to like insert some JavaScript that you copy and paste, stuff like that. And then it starts getting a little hairy. So that's where maybe it gets hard. If you know going in that you have a more advanced application or something that you want to grow really big or something that you want to be really versatile, you could choose another no code tool that's more versatile. And chances are, I haven't seen any that are extremely versatile and no brainer simple. So chances are it's going to be a little more complicated. But what I would say about it is you have a choice. You can learn to code, or you can learn a complicated no code platform. They're both similar. It's much easier to learn a complicated no code platform. I mean, they're made to be easy to learn, whereas code is extremely powerful with no limits. So it's not really made to be easy to learn. Code and all the different types of code you have to learn really takes years to master, whereas you can master a no code platform, in months, one of the complicated ones.
Yeah,
And
yes.
we have builders. That's the other side of it. Is I've seen plenty of people come in with absolutely no knowledge about how apps are put together or anything like that, and ultimately be successful and build really impressive things that are correct. The code that is underneath them is correct and good, and they've like learned how it functions, and they've gotten to that point where they truly are an app builder, even though they've never written code in their life.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I also, I mean, furthermore, I also say that there is not just one code platform. There is a
Yeah.
range, and this depends. I mean, the tool to use is the tools that must fit well with your goals. So the question now is, typically when you have like a goal, okay, what are the questions that you ask to yourself in order to say, okay, for this specific goal, I need these specific tools?
I would say it's based around, I mean, you have basically two kind of like choices. The first choice is if you need something like an app, like a native app versus a website versus an internal spreadsheet, something like that. So the first choice is what you're building. Different no code tools are made for different things, of course. But beyond that, I think it all comes down to your outcome. So if you're building something that is temporary or something that is like really simple and isn't advanced,
Can
you
you
have a
give
lot
us
more options.
can you give us some example? I mean, some practical example. When you say something really simple, for example, what do you mean?
So maybe you want to build an app, like a native app, but really all you want to do is you have, a list of your favorite foods and you just want to list them so you can see them. I mean, that's kind of a ridiculous example, but it's like something very simple where you're like, I want to build an app that does a simple thing. I don't need to open it to users. I don't need to monetize it. I don't need to do all these extra things that can be done in an app. An app like that, I mean, you could get that done very simply and very fast. There's out of the box. I think like Glide might be a good example for something like that, where you type in a few things and you have an app and a web version and it's done. But if you were like, instead, you said, I have this list of food that I'm listing, but I want users to sign in and see it. I want them to be able to add their own list of food, and I want to be able to charge them a subscription fee through Stripe. Now you're talking about an advanced application where you might not, it would be either too hard to build in some of the simpler platforms, or they might not even allow you. It might just be a limit where you can't build some of the features you need. So that's really where choosing the platform comes into play. And it's almost like if you can see the end goal, then you can choose one of the simpler platforms. If you can't see the end goal, if you're like, I want to build this thing that could grow this big, it could do this, it could do that, then that's a sure sign that you need one of the more advanced platforms. And there's a few. So Bildr is definitely one, but Bubble I would consider up there. Um, Flutter Flow, even I hear a lot about people using that these days, where they're kind of like they're a little more open ended than some other no code platforms.
What do you think about the scalability of this platform? Because one of the disadvantages that I typically read about no-code platform there when I look on web is that the scalability. I mean, most of people just blame the fact that sometimes it's very hard to scale when the number of users start to grow. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
have you ever experienced this problem?
I've heard about it plenty. I haven't really experienced it in my own work actually. Like most of the time, by the time I got to an end of a project when I was freelancing, I would have stitched a few things together and I would have handled that kind of stuff on my own. But I hear about it a lot, especially certain platforms are more prone to it than other platforms. But I don't think it's a systemic thing like in no code. It's not like a definition of no code that you have to have scalability issues. And in fact, like one of the biggest pros on about Bildr, and I can take a quick pause too and just say like the reason I work for Bildr is I had seen like every no code platform. I had a site that was running a list of no code platforms that was on the newsletter you read. So I had seen so many platforms. I came across Bildr and it was like so good and it was exactly what like I always wanted to see that I actually ended up joining the team. So that's kind of my background there. So it's like I very much believe in Bildr, but it's not just because I work for it. It's like the reason I work for it is because I believe
You
in
love
it.
it?
So anyway, with Bildr, what Bildr actually does is all the no code stuff you do just gets translated to very standard vanilla code, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and it gets placed directly on Microsoft Azure hosting, like a normal storage. So the end result of a Bildr project is like normal code that's just as scalable as any code you'd write. So Bildr itself is actually fully scalable, no matter how many users you get. What happens is inside Bildr, because it's so open ended, you can make any kind of app you want. You can make it do anything you want. And if you write an app that's inefficient, maybe it's not going to scale because of some inefficiencies, but it's always fixable. You're never limited in scalability by Bildr's platform itself. So that's kind of the cool thing about Bildr, and I'd say it's a little bit unique. The stereotype that no code doesn't scale is it has truth to it. I think in 2 to 5 years there'll be no more truth in that at all, but right now it still has a little truth in it.
Yes. And what about the property of the code? I mean, some of people are very scared about maybe building something that grows and becomes very big, and then be kicked off by the platform itself. I mean,
Yeah.
is this something that you have seen? What do you think about it? It's
I think it's
something
a
that
definite
you.
concern, you know,
Mm,
especially if we have people that use our platform to build client sites. And if you're building a client site for like a very large client, they're going to have the same question too. So even if you believe in the product and you know the product and et cetera, so the client's going to say, what if that platform goes away? We have some awesome plans to address it long term, you know, as far as like open sourcing it and decentralizing it. That would be just an amazing step. And our goal is always to, you know, is to be around forever. But of course, like that's some form of a systemic risk in no code. The other way that we handle that though is you can export Bildr code and host it yourself. So like you can't do it in the platform unless you're on an enterprise plan today. But like if Bildr were to shut down, we'd turn that on for every project and people would be able to export and move on. That's not true about every no code platform, but it is true for some others besides Bildr too.
mm. Yes, this is very very important, because one of the rules typically is always at the property of the code, and I think that see years and years of work that just go somewhere else. I don't know, in the space, just because
Yeah.
some CEO say no, I don't like you, or maybe you don't satisfy some of my rules. That's the
Yeah.
problem. And yeah, sorry, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
No, not really, but that is a great point, like the censorship point. Because I was thinking more about like a company, you know, going out of business, but it's like there's a whole censorship angle. That's a big thing with like Web3 is the anti-censorship, and Bildr played like we did a big Web3 stint because you can build all this Web3 stuff in our platform, you can't in others. So we were very much into that, and we have a lot of good thoughts on being, you know, making Bildr so that no one, even us, can censor someone on it. We wouldn't censor someone really today. We have terms of service. You have to follow them basically, but they're very lax as far as that stuff. We're pretty open.
Yes, before you said that you have seen, all the start of the no-code platform, and then you have seen, all the evolution until now, more or less. The question is, in what the no-code platform becomes better, which aspect, and which aspect, in your opinion, they become worse, if they become worse in some aspect.
I would say only better. I think everyone's pretty much become better, and I think the general sort of like basically generally going towards just becoming more professional is what I would say. Like every tool that a few years ago was a new experiment, they all had little limitations and little things where you might not actually you might make a prototype, but you might not be professional. Whereas I would say today, pretty universally, the goal of these tools is to make final, professional, polished products, and pretty much everyone, like all the major players in no code, are doing a really good job of that. Where like the things that are coming out are just like really like nice and finished, and you get an app, but you get a web app version, and it's got the right icon. So I think that professionalism has really stepped up, which makes sense. You know, like it was a brand new experimental type idea, and over the years, it just few years it's matured pretty greatly. And companies like Webflow, I mean, they're right up there with any other like major huge software company. They're just super professional, super big, and it wasn't like that a few years ago. Like who would have thought a no code platform could do that?
I very what I love most about this no-code platform, and that they make easier also for people without any background in computer science to build things. It's like now the creativity is like everyone have these tools. So it's like the amount of ideas that before um, were only made feasible by people with tech background. Now
Mm-hmm.
they can also be made feasible by people that don't have any experience in this, or by people that, like you, for example, you already had background in software development, but they start to think about, okay, here there is like a new library every day. I cannot follow all this stuff. I
Yeah.
don't have the time. I need to spend all my entire life just to master one. And that it's something very cool. And that maybe something that we haven't talked about, I don't remember. It's that when you start to build things using no-code platform, that you don't need to manage, for example, all the backend. So in the sense that you don't need to care about the security, the maintenance, and all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the biggest pros. And I think something like build, so if you just say that, if you say use this platform. You don't have to worry about security. You don't have to worry about XYZ. Developers will actually shut down from that. Like, that's bad. So, in itself, though, like, it is a huge time saver if you literally don't have to worry about that stuff. And I think we ride the line really well at Bildr, where like we build in all the correct levels of security and the things that are baseline security, like with user auth and all that stuff. All that's built in, but you still have access to it, and you still have the ability to both add more security if you want, but also you have the ability to do insecure things potentially sometimes. I mean, depending on your setup. So we leave that really open, which actually for us, we've seen like that gets developers back on board, because it's nice to have everything default taken care of and then have access to change it if you need to. That's like, I think what's the perfect balance. And so we try to do that basically with everything. That's actually kind of our method in general, is we no codify all these hard tasks, but make sure that we leave them open to still be fine tuned if someone wants to.
Cool. Okay, you have committed us that this no-code platform are very, 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 very good. What advice do you have for no-code makers who are just starting out? I mean, if you
I
think
think,
about yourself, when you
yeah,
started, there was like something that you really like to know, but
yeah. No, I think the biggest advice, which I kind of like say in general, is to always try things. In my career, that's been my biggest advantage, and like the thing that's helped me most is that if I have an idea, I build it, and if I see a new platform that looks interesting, I just try it. I just like go on and make something and then learn something and look something up. And everything I've done, I feel like I always look back like, oh, it's good I learned that thing 6 months ago that I tried, because I can use it now for this client. Or like, I feel like everything builds on top of each other. So if I think about where I am now, it's just a culmination of just like trying everything. And eventually, like one of the things I did was put out this no code directory site. Like, I just put it out there, and it's like, I could have just had that as a spreadsheet for myself, but I was like, no, I'll just make this and treat it like a business, like treat it like a product. And I did that and eventually sold it, and it was pretty awesome. So I think that's my advice, is just try everything. Even if it seems silly or it seems like you're playing, just try it, like take it to a finished professional level, charge for it, all those things. I think that's really important.
and then I also had something else to add because we talk about no code platform, but more or less in the web application field, like something that you can access using computer, blah blah. But there are also no code platform for mobile too.
Hmm.
And have you ever used them? I mean, what's in your level the grade of maturity of these tools in the platform field,
Yeah.
in the mobile device?
It's been a few years now. Like, since I've been a builder 3 years, and so I've kind of like, I'm not as up on the latest. But yeah, I had an app in the App Store for a little while that I made on Thunkable, and it did everything I needed as far as it was completely custom. The design of it, like, it was like a random idea that was custom. Thunkable let me do it custom, and then it got it in the iOS and the Android store. Got charged money for it, like all that stuff. It was good. And I used to be on the Adalo experts list, so I would do some freelance work for Adalo mobile apps. And at the time I did that, it was more like lists of things and predefined screens, but you could still get a lot done. I'm pretty sure Adalo is more advanced than that now. I'm pretty sure you can actually do
Yeah,
more
for sure.
custom things now. But yeah, I don't think there's any limitations. I think they've gotten really good, especially some of the mobile challenges, especially around like payments through the App Store and stuff like that. Some of those are pretty big challenges, and I feel like at least Adalo and Funkable have managed to get around them pretty good these days.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as you said before, these tools are estimated to only improve. Because I mean, if these tools, I mean, the if the number of these tools increase, is because there is a demand from users.
Hmm.
And in order, the first rule of an entrepreneur, is always try to give more value as possible to people. And so, giving more value means improve the product. And so this means that the product will improve, so they will add more feature and blah blah blah, and so on and
Yep.
so on and so on. And I want just to open some parentheses about your entrepreneurial journey, because you build a lot of stuff, you sell other stuff. Uh, in your opinion, thanks to this no-code platform, how the entrepreneurship change, if change? Because typically the entrepreneur change, over time. Because before was typically the company that build the product and sell it to the customers. We thought listen the customers, then we pass to a more customer-centric approach. Now we have this no-code platform. something changed in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean it's shockingly different from so when I my first agency that I started when I was younger, that was still that was like well technically we were founded the same year as Facebook, but like it took a little while. So I was like basically pre-Facebook. So like things were way different back then, compared to now. And I think what we have now is like just it's amazing. It's basically like we're removing gatekeepers and removing barriers more and more and more and more, and all that's doing is like it's causing an explosion of creativity and like an explosion of apps that are coming out. I mean, there's founders that have products today that don't know how to code, which that wasn't possible a few years ago. And so it's like, I mean, imagine how many, like the sheer number of people that are like that. So it's crazy. And honestly, what's going to happen next with AI? That's going to even broaden that field even more. So that's the biggest change.
That's an interesting point. That's an interesting point, and I would like to talk about this because now there is ChatGPT, all this stuff. But I'm sure, I'm sure that maybe there is already some no-code platform that integrates some extensions, some plugins, something that will also take in account this new stuff like the
Yeah.
ChatGPT. And I don't know if you know something about this. I mean, if you ever use these tools, this artificial
Yeah.
intelligence stuff, because I already know, for example, there is like the AppSheet, maybe it's the no-code platform from
Mhm.
Google, if I remember well, that just make very easy for you to apply the most powerful artificial intelligence algorithm to make prediction. It's like really, you just need to select the model,
Yeah.
and I think that I mean this stuff already exists.
Yeah, yeah. So
This-
you can make all that in Builder right now. Builder has all the AI actions built in, so you can do all that stuff. So we've been like immersed in it basically. I actually released like a chat app. That's an app, but you don't install through the App Store, and it's made with Builder and it's made with GPT-4, like the newest thing, just to kind of showcase all that stuff. So we're really into it, and we're right now in the process of putting this kind of huge plan together for how it's going to be inside of our studio, like all the different parts in our studio where AI can help someone. And what's really kind of amazing is in Builder, it's very code like, but it's not code, but you still do a lot of code stuff and the code is exposed in a lot of places. So our users who don't know code, they're building things in Builder. And when they hit like a block, they go to ChatGPT and they say write a JavaScript function to capitalize the first letter of a sentence or some whatever minor task they need to do. And Builder's set up in a way that's really cool. This makes it really easy to do that, where you can pop in that custom JavaScript and it turns into a no code action. So it's
oh,
like our users that don't know code are kind of using Builder plus Chat GPT and like putting stuff out that's legit. Where I'm like, whoa, like like you just came in here and said you're not a code like 2 days ago, and it's impressive stuff. So, and it's gonna
so
go. I mean, that's the tip of the iceberg, right? With AI, it's gonna go way further than that.
So you are that are listening us now. You don't have any excuse. I mean, if you don't have a bachelor degree in computer science, a master. I mean, if you don't know how to code, you can use no code platform. And if you still need something to code manually, you can ask ChatGPT to write it for you on your behalf.
Exactly.
So you really don't have any excuse. How do you see the evolution of the no code platform in the future? If you can, I mean, uh, project yourself in 10 years from now,
I mean,
what
10 years is like so hard to think right now because of this AI stuff. Because that's kind of my answer. Is I feel like it's all moving towards AI. And my
mm,
question is how if the ultimate state of AI for a no code builder is like a text box and you just type into it and it makes your app or your whatever, if that's the end state, my question is how far towards that end state do we really get? Because I don't know if people really want just one text box. I feel like people do want to tinker a little. Builders love to build, that kind of thing. So I don't know if we'll get to that end state, but that's what I see as the ultimate end state is purely a chat UX build anything, and not just build anything, but say, okay, now can you add this? Now can you change
mhm.
this? That's really the key too.
It's
Is you
crazy.
got to have that fine grained control for it to really work.
Yeah, I think that we will arrive soon at a point where you can just write your idea,
Hmm.
and this artificial intelligence stuff will write the entire platform. I mean, at least a prototype. I'm not saying
Yeah.
that is it, but because it's very crazy. I mean, if you think about the current state of the art now, you can do a lot of stuff now. Before I was using it in order to receive some suggestion about my code in Flutter.
Hmm.
and it's really crazy, 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 crazy. So as you said, it's impossible to make prediction in 10 years, but it's very, how to say, it's very funny, at least to just
Oh
create
yeah.
some hypotheses and stuff like that. And I have one last question for you. So if you can talk about um, where can we learn more about you and your project? What are your current project? I mean, you already talked about a bit about this, and what will be your future project if you can talk about them?
Yeah. So Builder that I talked about most, which is what I would say is my day job. It's what I spend, most of my time on. Builder is BILDR.com. And there's a whole, I mean, that's a huge platform. There's lots of education. There's a really good Discord community you can find through the website. That's kind of like where I am, is I'm always in that Discord, and that's what I'm pushing most right now is Builder. But also I do have my freelance consulting slash side product business that I was running that before Builder, and I just, I've kept it going. That's called Work and Whistle. And so that's workandwhistle.co. And
Okay.
and also on True Drew, sorry, on Twitter, I'm at True Drew Co.
Perfect. So, Drew, thank you very much. You give us a lot of very, 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 very important information. Thank you for all your work. I mean, you are doing very crazy stuff, very good, good, good stuff. And it's also thanks to you that I'm starting to approach these tools because, as I said, I was reading a lot of story thanks to that newsletter. And then I reached your story and say, no, I want to talk with this guy. So
Awesome.
thank you very much for being here, for having best time with us, and I hope to hear you soon. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.